Mr. Adli.
Yeah.
To today's session, we will talk about Internet of Things security. Actually, Adli and I are friends more than 10 years, right? Yeah,
Yeah, more.
yeah, more than that. Back to
Yeah.
maybe 2005 or 2006, something like that. So
Yeah,
luckily, we are still in cybersecurity.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
We,
okay, and
we are
yeah,
yeah, we are very old.
yeah, and he is a Cambodian community, the guy who are interested in cyber and willing to explore more. So
Mhm.
today is I'm very happy to have you on our Cyber Youth Cambodia sessions number 4.
All
So
right.
so I give the floor to you. So how we proceed? You do the show and somebody can write the question through the chat so you can look at it and maybe answer in between is better.
Okay. Okay. I will do
Okay.
that.
Okay.
I will also maybe turn off my video. I'll just show the slides.
Yes.
Maybe
Okay.
it'll be easier.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So we
1
can start.
second. Yep. Let me share my screen first. There you go. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Of course.
Okay. And then I'll turn off video if I can find it. Oh, there you go. All right. So thank you, Mr. Phannarith, for for inviting me.
Yes. Yes.
I'm very happy to be here tonight to be sharing with you guys. Although the coronavirus have prevented us from traveling, good thing the internet is still working. So my idea tonight, or my thinking tonight, is to maybe share a bit on the security of IoT. I know this is an old topic. People have been talking it for a very long time. But my worry is that the problem is just getting worse and it's not going away. So that's why I want to highlight this issue to some of you. And I plan to do this by showing you some data from our HoneyNet project, some of the things that we see recently. And also maybe think about how we secure the IoTs at home and why this is very important, okay? So maybe I will talk for about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll do a Q&A in the end, or I would like to hear from you also of any opinions and thoughts about this issue. I also have some online poll, so please stand by with your mobile phone. I have some questions to ask, and we'll see the feedback from the community. Okay. Okay, so Mr. Phannarith and I have been friends for a long time.
Where's nice photo? Huh?
So that's me when I was maybe, well, I don't know, maybe in the 30s, huh?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. And this was at our workshop in Cambodia.
Yes.
Many years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mr. Phannarith is still young and fit, as you can see. Still handsome, but he's still handsome now. So, you know, nothing changed there.
Okay.
But yeah, I would like to take this opportunity to connect with the rest of you who doesn't know me yet. I still have a lot to learn especially from the younger generation. So let's connect. You know, you see my email there, my LinkedIn, Unsplash, Instagram. I got everything. So let's connect so that after this talk we can connect more. A bit about my work at Informatic. So my day job is at Asia Pacific Network Information Center. As you know, we manage the IP address and AS number for the Asia Pacific region. My job there is to do security engagement, not only with our members, but also with important stakeholders like the CERT. You know, CamCERT is one example. the law enforcement agencies. There are many security incidents that are actually cyber crime in nature. So we want to go after the bad guys. So the law enforcement agencies like the police, they try to do investigation, and we try to facilitate and do some training with them. We are not the police, we're just helping them. And also sometimes talking to government people so that they have better policies in dealing with security issues. Because sometimes when you talk about security, everybody agree that security is very important, but they don't have any policies in place, so that you cannot enforce security, or you cannot ask organizations to have minimum security, right? So for example, if you are selling software, I want to make sure that you are selling software that is secure. And if one day the software becomes unsecure, you will release a patch for it, right? So in some countries, it's a policy that before we buy software, the company must be able to provide patches when there is a security issue, right? So that we will always be secure. So this is where policy makers are very important, or people who make rules or high level decision, right? So that's why as a security people, we have to talk to everybody, and we have to like convince people that we have to work together to do security. So we have a lot of security programs at APNIC. One thing that might interest you, especially now that we cannot travel, is academy.apnic.net. We have some online courses. Some are very introductory, but there's also intermediate courses, not only in security, but also in routing and networking. So maybe you can have a look, and in your spare time, try some of the courses and let us know what you think. Okay, so my agenda today is to get everybody to think about security. Like I said, security is not new. Everybody understands security is very important and what needs to be done. Especially if you have worked in security for a long time, then I think you are familiar with many issues related to security, right? The malware, the scam, the fraud, social engineering, the need to secure things by patching, by having two-factor authentication, secure password. I mean, we know all of this. Like, I don't have to learn more about it. I know that it is important, and I know it's a problem. But the sad thing is that the problems are getting worse, in my opinion. Mr. Phannarith said that we've been doing security for ages, and I am seeing the same issue over and over and over again, but at a bigger scale. So maybe in the old days when we have a malware outbreak, maybe it's, let's say, 10,000 computers infected. Today, when we learn about an infection, a computer virus infection, it's 500,000 machines, So from 10,000 to 500,000, man, that's crazy, right? And, if we don't fix this, it's going to affect us one day, right? And maybe it has already, and we just don't know about it. So I want to show you some data from my honeypots to get us to think about security, why this is an ongoing thing. Every day we're seeing this. And the next bit is trying to relate all of that to the security of IoTs at home, right? Because now people are forced to work from home, which means that, there is less security, because at the office, we have secured everything. We are monitoring everything. We have proxies, we have firewalls, we are patching everything on time. And now we are asking our staff, hey, work from home. But at home, we are no longer in control of some of the devices they have there, which may not be secure. And if they are compromised, they may affect our organization, right? So how do we quickly help everybody to be secure? And maybe looking at some of the issues there. So that's the plan generally. I am going to go straight into the honeypots. I'm not sure if some of you have not heard about honeypots or not, but in general, honeypot is a tool that we use to learn about attacks, right? So at APNIC, we have the APNIC Community HoneyNet project. It's been ongoing for maybe 5 years now. We have many partners, including in Cambodia, who are deploying honeypots for us and things like that. The whole idea is to learn about attacks, right? And to basically to see what is happening on a day-to-day basis. We facilitate the infrastructure to build the honeypots, but our partners deploy the honeypots in their own environment, right? So now I think we have more than 100 honeypots around Asia Pacific region. So let me know if you are interested to participate in this later. But basically, I want to show you the back end. It is a very fancy graph, right? But the point of showing you this is that sometimes when you want to learn about things that are happening on the internet, you have to build the infrastructure for it, right? So this is our HoneyNet infrastructure. We build some servers to collect information. There are some processing, and then there are tools we use for aggregating information, right? So you have the honeypots. Those are open source software running on servers or virtual machines, right? They send all the data to one location, right, which we capture in a database. Because we have a lot of honeypots, we do some load balancing here. From here, we use file beats and logstash to process the logs because the logs are very raw. They are in JSON format. And after enhancing the data a bit, we send them to Elasticsearch. That's for aggregation, so you can search easily. We also use BigQuery in the back end for analytics. And then you can see the dashboard with Kibana, or you can generate alerts with Elasticsearch. So I'm sure if you have built a SOC, this is the same idea, right? We collect data from various locations. We send them to a processing engine, filter things out, enriching, and then we put it somewhere where somebody can see things or we get alerts. So the same concept, except if you are at home, you probably do not have a monitoring system like this, right? So this is something to monitor events that are happening around the globe. So that's a bit about our honeypot. Now, one of the honeypots that we have is called Cowrie. This is a very popular honeypots. In fact, if you attend some of our courses, if we teach honeypots, we will show you Cowrie because it's the easiest to understand and to get. Now, Cowrie is very simple because what Cowrie does is that it listens on port 22 and 23. So what's on it on 22 and 23? Telnet and SSH. Why is Telnet and SSH very interesting? Well, Telnet and SSH is very interesting because this is a service that allows someone to connect to a device to manage it, right? It's a remote management tool. So if I want to administer a machine or a computer, right, or a device, I will connect to it remotely using 22 or 23. And that's, that's assuming that, you don't use the web. And this is something that you'll find on many things, right? So we put this Cowrie honeypots on the internet and we wait for people to come and connect to it, right? And you'll be surprised how many attempts we get every single day, thousands of attempts, right? Of people trying to log in, right? First they scan, they see, hey, is there a Telnet port? Yes. Is there SSH port? Yes. Let's connect to it and then try all combinations of password, right? Of course, because this is a honeypot, we let them in, right? So they can use any username and password. We let them in. And when they're inside, we give them shell. Once they get shell, then normally they will execute some commands and we record all of this, right? Some commands will tell the honeypot to download something. We capture the file, right? We collect this information. So as you can see, by doing this, we get a lot of information. Number one, we got the source IP address of where the attack is coming from, right? Number two, we get to see the tools that they use. Number three, we get to see what username password they actually use, right? And from there, we can actually learn a lot when it comes to security. Anyhow, this is a honeypot that we deployed in Mongolia. I think 3 minutes after deploying the honeypots, we have our 2 successful logins, right? So look at the left and right. This is the first login after installing the honeypot. And this is the second one. Okay. So what can you see there? So let's look at the source IP, right? They are from different places. I hide the IP address a bit so that nobody goes to the IP address or ping it, right? So one is 123.bc.12. the other one 80.something.some.62, right? So both are successful in logging into the honeypot. Both use root username, right? But look at the password that they use. Taz at blah, 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 Taz at something else, right? Two different locations, same username, same password. If you are a security analyst, what are you thinking right now? So let me give you 1 second to think. So two different IP addresses attacking my honeypot, both managed to log in, but both are trying the same password. What is going on here? So one possibility is that these two devices that are attacking me, they are probably compromised already by the same malware, or they are owned by the same attacker, right? Because once they probe a honeypot, or once they probe a server, they try to log in and they choose the same password, right? So that's one thing, right, to think about. So hold that thought, right? Here is another example, right? In this case, the source IP is the same IP address, right? It's logging into the same honeypot, right? But on the 22nd of August, it logs in, or it tries to log in using root and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Because this is a honeypot, we let it in, right? 6 days later, the same machine, the same IP address, try to log in, right? But this time it uses root and a different password, right? So of course we let it in. So if you are a security analyst, what is going through your mind right now? What's happening to that internal IP address? And I will tell you, it's a Linux server that is doing this, right? So it means one thing, that whatever is on that internal IP address or internal machine, it doesn't really care what it is hitting, right? As long as there's a SSH or telnet, it will try to log in, right? And it will just try any random password. Maybe there is a dictionary or list of password to try, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the thing that we see from the honeypots, and we see a lot of this, right? Previously, I said that, we don't only let people log in, but we also let them execute some commands, right? So one of the tools, right? One of the infected machine, one of the compromised machine that tried to log in, right? Issued a download command, wget or curl, right? And the honeypot happily download this file, right? And this is the URL. And we have a copy of the file. So if you run a honeypot, you also have the tools or software that are being used by the attacker. So we have a copy of this file. With that information, we can do some analysis, right? So we look inside those files, and that file contains more commands, right? So it's a curl or wget command, right? And then it will execute using shell, right? And it will also create a cron tab. So for those of you who are familiar with Linux or Unix, you know what cron tab is, right? Cron tab is a tool that will allow you to schedule a task so that it will run, right, every 10 minutes or every time, and so on and so forth. So after the host logged into our honeypot, it then issued a command to download a file, and inside this file, right, it downloads a script, executes it, and also issued a cron tab. And the cron tab is basically to download the file, every few minutes and execute it again, so that whatever this person is trying to install on a server will always be installed and run and executed. So here we learn about the techniques or trick to persist or persistence on a host. If you look further into the file that has been downloaded, right, then we can see some very interesting things, right? So it checks the architecture, for example, right? Is this a 64-bit machine? Is it an ARM machine? Is this a MIPS processor? What is it? So it checks for that, and then it will download certain files, right? And although all of this looks like an image file, right, they are actually executable files, right? So it's just a trick, right, to name it PNG or JPEG, but this is actually an executable. And we can do some analysis because we have the hash, right? And go to a website like VirusTotal, for example, to see, what are we looking at here? So based on the hash that I have, right, and the file name, I have the hash. I go to VirusTotal to look it up, and not surprising, VirusTotal says that, hey, this is malware, right? This is a coin miner, right? So what we can see here, right, in the last few slides is that I have a honeypot. Someone tried to connect to my honeypot. I let this person in, or let this device in. This device then issued a command to my honeypot to download a file. We analyze the file, and we discover that the file is actually an executable that will install a coin miner, right? A coin miner on the host, right? So if you really think about it, right, there are many reasons why attackers would like to get into someone else's device, right? One is probably to make some money by installing a coin miner, right? The other reason could be to steal information, right? So maybe, you have some interesting stuff on the server, but it could also be to use the device as a proxy, for example, right? So I don't want to do much with your device, but later on, maybe I can use it as a proxy. And also, depending on the nature of the device, maybe there are other things that I can do with it, right? So let's think about this, right? When we look at a security incident, right, such as this one, or when we are analyzing a tool, right, we have questions, right? So sometimes when we look at a problem or at a scenario, it gives us more questions, right? So what is the technique used to gain access? In this case, it was very simple, brute force, right? Which means that if you have an account of any kind, and if you have just username and password, people will just try to guess your password, right? And if they get lucky, they get in. And this is where two-factor authentication can be important, right? So even if they can guess your password, if there is 2FA, they still cannot get in. But more importantly, who or what is behind those IP addresses? Is it a human being, right, sitting on a computer hacking? Or is it a device, right, that has been compromised and is doing this automatically? What we see from our honeypots are basically, devices that has been compromised, and they're just doing this automatic scanning and infection, right? And that's why they don't care if they have infected the device before. They keep on trying to get in, right? So that's how we know. And sometimes I wonder what is exactly behind those IP address. Is it a computer? Is it a router? Is it an IPTV, right? Is it a CCTV? What is it exactly? Is it a printer? Question mark, because we don't know. What is the payload, right? So we know just now there was a coin miner, but it could be other things. It could be a backdoor. It could be, it could be a script to modify DNS, for instance, right? Are the owner of the attacking devices aware? I forgot to add the word here, aware that their devices is actually attacking me, right? Or are those devices servers that are built by attacker specifically to run attacks? So what I'm asking here is that when somebody is attacking my honeypots, right, are the device built to attack, or are they a compromised device which is owned by someone else, right? And most importantly is that what does the infrastructure looks like? Attacker, when they launch an attack, we call them campaigns, right? To run campaigns, they have to build the infrastructure. So they have to build the network, they have to build the servers for serving malware, they have to infect more machines, and so on and so forth. So it's not an easy job, right? But as a defender, right, if I would like to take down this infrastructure, I have to know what the infrastructure looks like. And this is where sharing of information is very important. And that's why I'm sharing information with you guys. All right. Any questions so far? Let me look at the chat if there's any question. How do I see the chat? Let me see.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Go ahead.
If there is no question, then I will show you our back end quickly, right? So that you can see what we see in the back end. So the example I give you is just maybe, one example from a sensor and one tiny example. I will stop sharing and I will go to my browser. Just give me one minute. So 1 minute. Okay. And where is Zoom? I will share my screen again. Okay, can you guys see my browser?
Yeah, yes. Go ahead.
Okay. So this is the Kibana back end. Let me see, make it bigger. Yeah. So let me search. So I built a lot of dashboards for this. So let's hope this works. So I will just go to the last maybe 7 days. Yeah. So I'll change the time here in the corner. Hopefully this works. We'll just give it a few minutes to load. So last 7 days, we have more than 171,000 unique IP addresses that are hitting our honeypots. We have about 72 active one. They're on and off. So that's a lot of IP addresses, right? So if you think about, IP addresses that are attacking and maybe 90% of them are infected machines, then that's a serious situation because nobody is paying attention to these things. Okay. And they're from all over the world, right? Including Asia. You can see the traffic, right? So even though we have coronavirus, the malware is still active. They don't care, right? They keep on working. The interesting thing is probably here, as you can see, these are URLs with the malware, right? So these are very active. Don't try to go to those links, okay? Unless you know what you're doing. If you get infected, don't blame me. You can blame Mr. Phannarith. But as you can see, these are the URL that we see in the honeypots, right? And if you go to this URL, like I said, you can download the malware. And I thought it was funny because I see there was a malware that is called coronavirus. Okay, I will show you later. But you can see that this particular malware, for example, this URL were seen in our honeypots more than 4,000 times, right? So a lot of machines keep on getting to our honeypots and asking the honeypot to download the same files. Okay, so that's one I want to share with you to have a look at. Maybe here is clearer, right? These are the active URL, all the bots, botnets, and so on and so forth. You can see how many times they were downloaded. And this is just in the last 7 days. Yeah, last 7 days. Okay. These are the username and password being used to log into the honeypots, right? So some of the username, maybe, you are used to it because you always see admin or root. But some of them are quite interesting, right? So for example, let me see. Okay, something like this, Jenkins, right? Or Hunt 5759. And let me see. I don't have I don't have some good examples here, but okay, let's go for a bit more. Maybe we go the last 30 days. Yeah, so you can see some of the interesting passwords that are there, right? Remember just now I showed you the hash. So the hash, these are the hash of the files that are downloaded, right? So if I take this and I search on sites like VirusTotal, I probably could see what people are trying to download or install on my systems, right? So you see some interesting stuff here, like this, right? And so on and so forth, right? So by looking at the username and password, we can actually come up with some interesting guess. For example, maybe the malware is targeting specific device. And these are some of the default username and password for those devices that people do not change, right? So it will just keep on trying and go into the device itself. So by looking at this data, we see that the problem is not going away, right? I mean, we see this every day. What can we do to stop this? Okay, that's something we can talk about later. But from my dashboard, I also have some interesting views. So when we collect data, we can present it in so many ways. One of the things that we can do is we can see by country, right? So let's say I want to see attacks from Japan, or attacks from IP addresses from Japan, to be more accurate, right? So I can go to something like this, right? So as you can see, right, not much interesting stuff here from Japan, right? But we see a lot of 462 IP addresses hitting our honeypots. Username and password, we have some hashes. We don't have that much URLs compared to the other ones, but you know, there are some interesting stuff or interesting files being downloaded, right? Let me see if I have you know, another country, maybe your neighbor, Vietnam. Right? Definitely more hits, right? And we can see you know, different types of hashes, right? On the honeypots and so on and so forth, right? And you can see, you know, there's a lot of activities. There are certain days where you have a lot of hits. Sometimes we wonder why, you know, some days are more active than others and so on and so forth. So you can do things like that once you have, you know, a lot of data to process, right? So which makes me think, after all these years of doing security, promoting security, right? Maybe people are not getting the message, right? And sometimes I wonder why people are not getting this message, right? Why these things are still happening, despite, you know, the efforts that we do to educate people about improving security. Sometimes I think that one of the reasons why this is happening, or this is allowed to happen, is because some of these attacks, they are invisible to the user, which means that they don't affect the user as much, right? If I tell this to an ISP, if I say that, hey, ISP, there are 5 IP addresses from your network that is hitting my honeypots, right? The ISP will probably say, well, you know, that's interesting to know, but our network is okay, right? Of course, because this honeypot is not attacking that ISP, right? This is a recruitment process, which then one day will be used to attack someone, right? But not the one who is infected. So the ISP maybe don't really care about this because it's not affecting me right now. However, if you let this go on, right, many more damage can be done to other organizations around the world, including maybe in your own country, right? So that's my thinking. I don't know what you guys think about it, but let's go back to our slides.
We have one question, Ali, in the chat.
One question.
Yeah, you browse to the chat.
Okay. So The honeypot example, what makes me think that it's a bot? Yes, so cron tab is a good sign, but not just cron tab, because a hacker who is hacking manually can issue that, right? But it's actually a script, and the speed of how things happen, right? So it's attempt, login, run script, exit, right? So we can see this in the timestamp, how much time they spend on the honeypot. Normally just a few seconds, right? So if someone was typing, then normally, it's like a minute or more than a minute. And then sometimes they have typos and things like that. So this is perfect execution, right? Scan, open ports, brute force, get in, run script, exit, right? So everything is running in the background, and, find another host to attack. So that's basically how we conclude that this was part of a bot, and therefore most likely the source IP is an infected device that was infected by something in the first place. I hope that's clear enough. Happy to provide more clarification, but I would like to go to my slide to talk about what we have now. Let's see. All right, so that was a honeypot. I hope that was interesting. And now, everybody has to go home, right? A lot of people have to work from home now. And as I said earlier, this worries some people in security, because it's going to become a bit trickier to enforce complete security, right? Yes, you can have some security. I can tell the staff that is going home, make sure you patch the office laptop, right? But when this person takes the stuff home, then the home environment may not be necessarily safe, because there are other, internet-able device at home. So it makes it very interesting. Before we proceed, can we do a quick poll, right? So you need your mobile device or your computer to go to slido.com, right? And hang on a sec. And on slido.com, I have enabled a poll right now, right? And if you enter that code, you will see the question, right? Can people see it?
Hold on, we are going.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we saw a poll.
Okay, can you try to answer? How many internet devices do you have at home?
Oh, okay, we starting to do it.
Okay, less than 5 or more, 5 to 10.
Yeah, I think mostly between 5 to 10.
Okay, let's see. We have 7 people who have done it. I'll wait for maybe two more minutes.
Yeah, we can.
1 more minute.
12 now.
Yeah.
30.
Then I can share. Yeah. Okay. 20 more seconds. 20 more seconds. Okay. Less than 5 is getting higher. It's catching up. No one has more than 10. Okay. I think I have more than 10.
Okay.
It's all the junk devices I have also. That's a problem. All right. I think we can stop now, or if you want to go ahead, but I guess we can say more or less, more or less more than 70%, almost 80% of people here have 5 to 10, right? Internet-able devices at home. And I hope you have a good security practice at home, to be able to secure those things as you would in the enterprise, right? So here's the problem, right? And I think we are aware of this. Home and enterprise network are different, definitely. because at home you have lack of security controls. There is some, but maybe bare minimum, just maybe on your single machine. There is no monitoring maybe overall in the home network. Security policies are probably not really enforced, right? Because you don't have the tools. And this could be a risk to the enterprise, right? So we think of a scenario, even at APNIC, we think of a scenario where right now everybody is working from home. But one day when everybody comes back to the office, maybe we need to do a check, a quick check first on those devices before we let them connect to the office network, right? And this is because maybe while they are at home, machines get infected. Even when they try their best to update and things like that, funny things happen. Because sometimes maybe people share their machines, their computer with their kids or their partners and so on and so forth. So there is some risk, right? But not just to the enterprise, but also individuals, right? And also your safety when you don't have the home network. And this brings the question, right? The burning question is on how do we help others? Because all of you here are security people, I assume. So you don't need to be convinced that this is important, right? But how do we help others out there to secure their home environment, right? Because you have a bunch of things that are connected to the internet and can potentially be compromised, and this can lead to other issues, maybe some privacy issues if a camera is compromised, but also a compromised device in any of this network can lead to other devices being compromised as well, right? It could be an internal infection, lateral movement, and so on and so forth, right? However, one thing that we have to think about is that, there are many things that you have to kind of know and answer, right? One is that how many of these devices are directly exposed to the internet, right? Because if they're not, then maybe, the risk is slightly less of these things being compromised. There is risk, but the risk could be slightly less, right? Okay, because they're not directly accessible. For those devices that are exposed on the internet, right? Are there any public interfacing services, or even the ones that are here installed in your network? Are there any, services that allows maybe remote management and things like that? Maybe a telnet port. I know my printer has a not telnet, but FTP for sure, and a web interface, right? I was trying to think what happens if somebody can hack my printer. Maybe they can see what I've stored on the printer, right? Some documents. I don't know if they can use my printer to hack my other computers, but I've seen some demos at some hacking conferences where people hack printers to hack other devices, right? And things like that. These devices, right? Do they have weak authentication, right? Or are they running any vulnerable services or software, right? Because then, it can, make them more exposed or at a higher risk, right? So even like if you have a home network with a Wi-Fi or a wired network at home, the authentication to get inside your network, is that weak? Are you using, a weak protocol that a neighbor can come into the network and, abuse your host or spread malware? Or, you are you're using a secure protocol to do that, right? And of course, for us network security people, we kind of know how to do this. Like I can look it up, I can Google it, I can find, what version of router I'm running, I can check the best practices and so on and so forth. But for the average user, average professional user, do they know or do they have time to tweak or play around with, with the router? Because if they don't secure this, right, then potentially other things can be compromised. And we'll talk more about this later on. So what we have seen in the past that has happened in a home setting like this, and you may know as well, is that individually, yes, the machines can be compromised, right? Especially if it's a computer or a mobile device, right? Because you will go out on the internet. So attacker doesn't have to come into the network. on the internet, and they just wait at some, strategic websites. They compromise the website. You go there, and you get compromised, right? So that's why you have to secure the endpoints. But DNS has always been the go-to technique for a bunch of attackers, right? So if you look at this picture, where are the places where attacker can modify the DNS settings? So I guess you will say, well, all these endpoints, the phones, the laptops, right? A printer, not much DNS settings here. Maybe not the IP cameras, I think. But this is gold, right? This is a gold mine. This is where if I modify the DNS and all these devices get a DHCP from it, then I can then point the computers to use the attacker's DNS infrastructure, right? So then they can redirect traffic, they can do other things with it. And if it's compromised, then attacker can also install other tools on it, right? Like a web proxy, a backdoor or something like that can monitor or sniff traffic and so on and so forth, right? So this is the risk, right? This is one of the biggest risks in a home environment, right? Of course, we have other risk here, right? In the office environment, if I have a SOC, I can probably install agents on all these devices and monitor their activities. But at home, I don't have the means to do that. Okay, so what we are looking at here is that the one that is sitting in between internal network and external is normally this piece of IoT, right? This Internet of Things, normally a Linux-based system. And sadly enough, in recent years, they are being sold cheaply, which is good news for us, but being sold in an unsecure manner, right? Which means that sometimes they have ports open that are not necessary and by default turned on, like Telnet and SSH, and even sometimes port 80, and listening on the external interface instead of the internal ones. And now, every time this gets a public IP address, it is exposed to the wider internet, right? And to maybe a compromised machine or an attacker who tries to log in, install a backdoor, a command and control, or modify the DNS, and so on and so forth, right? And putting all of the devices at risk. And of course, in the long run, maybe the organization. And it can be very complicated, right? Compromised device can launch attack, right? So this router here, right, can help infect other computers, or the router itself can start scanning the internet to, distribute the malware or attacks and so on and so forth, right? So this is one thing that I'm thinking about when I look at my honeypots data. I'm like, there's a lot of IP address here. If I do a quick scan on it, I find a lot of routers, right? They're D-Link. I can fingerprint them easily, and using services like Shodan and things like that. So there are Linksys, D-Link, MikroTik, and many other types, or some unknown brands even, sitting on home networks or enterprise small businesses network, serving the local host for the internet, at the same time becoming, a source of evil to others and also potentially to the internal network, right? So what can we do? I have another poll, all right? So can we go to the Slido again? And I have a question for all of you. And this time the question is, have you ever patched or updated your home router? Ooh, security people are good. 60% never. 22. We're losing. We're losing the battle. What's going on? Oh my goodness. Yeah. All right, guys. Maybe I'll wait for 20 more seconds. So this is the reality of security today, right? Okay. 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so everybody has the answer now. 86% of us have never patched our home router. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's a bad thing, right? Because that means you might be running um, a vulnerable router. Maybe you have looked at it, right? Maybe you have checked that the router is not exposing any services on the internet. So that's good for you. But if you haven't, then maybe you would like to have a look at it, right? And yesterday, I think, or a few days ago, I was speaking about this to a friend. They're like, "Oh, you can update, or you can patch a router." I didn't know that. Okay, that's interesting. So that's the kind of people we are dealing with. Like they don't even know that you can patch it, right? Because it doesn't look like a computer. How can I patch it, or a phone, maybe? So that's the thing we have to think about, guys, and something that is important for us to help create awareness. Now, this is not just theory, right? I don't have the time to talk about some of these incidents because we are running a bit late. But I would like to direct you to maybe 3 or 4 interesting incidents, right? The first two is well known in the security community, right? Maybe you guys have heard of it. The first one is VPN filter, right? Where attackers specifically target routers of many brands, right? You name it, maybe the brand that you're using is on that list as well. They compromise using various techniques, right? Known vulnerabilities like, maybe, bypass authentication or just weak credentials, or maybe, a remote code execution vulnerability. Not 500 compromised device, 500,000, right? I forgot the K here, more than 500,000 compromised devices around the globe, right? What was scary about this VPN filter attack? VPN filter was discovered by the Cisco security team, Cisco Talos, right? They have written a very nice research on it. So that's why I'm not gonna put their stuff here. Just search for VPN filter. You'll find this website that I'm talking about. And it's a very sophisticated attack because I think attackers realize that, people will be using all these devices that they can buy on the internet, right? Including places where, you are managing critical infrastructure, like an ISPs or I don't know, I'm thinking maybe a shipping company, right? Or even at home, right? So the goal is to compromise all these devices and then use that to steal information. So what they do is they steal username, passwords, or credential over HTTP. So if it's plain text, they can extract this information. And they also they were looking for traffic that is related to industrial control system, the Modbus protocol, which makes it really interesting and really made people think that, hey, there might be a real nation state actor behind this attack. So VPN filter targets routers, right? The second one is also very interesting. I'm not sure if you have heard of it. I think researchers from Kaspersky, Cert, and maybe another group revealed this, I think also around 2018, and still very active today, right? The goal of the attack is to compromise Android devices, right? How do they do it? They go after the routers, modify the DNS, right? And for Android users, they will be directed to a site asking them to download an Android executable, APK, right? For For Apple users, right? They try to socially engineer the users to giving your username, password, and also the code, right? So that they can manage their account and things like that, right? So check out the roaming mantis. It's very active in the Asian region. Some of the DNS IP addresses that are used, part of this is published. So if you are checking your router tonight, right? Check your router, log in, see if the DNS has been modified or not. Maybe that's one thing to have a look at, right? I also saw, vulnerability in MikroTik. that allow installation of web proxy and trick users to execute coin miners. So the vulnerability is in MikroTik device. What attacker do is that they will write a script, and then if you are trying to go on the internet, you go through this web proxy that they install on the MikroTik device and create an iframe where in one of the iframe there's a coin miner script running that will be running on your computer each time you go on the internet. So this is also, a year or two ago. And the last one was recent. I think maybe last week I read this. Hackers are targeting, again, vulnerable dealing in Linksys router, maybe weak passwords or, or some vulnerability, not even 0 days. And basically modifying the DNS of the router so that users are directed to a website where they are prompted with downloading a software for checking whether you have coronavirus or not, right? So exploiting current scenarios for that, for this situation. Now, this is all very interesting. And of course, attackers have only one goal, right? I mean, they have many goals, but basically attackers want something from you or from the users, and they will use the easiest way to get this from you, right? And in our case, if especially in the home environment, the most valued target, one of the most valued target, in addition to your endpoints, is that ADSL router, or that that router that you have at home. That's like your Active Directory at work. Hackers going to the enterprise, they go after the infrastructure like Active Directory or or maybe even the DNS. But at home, that's probably one of the most prized asset. And unfortunately, if you look at our survey just now, people don't patch it, right? Or people sometimes even don't even check it because it's running. It's working fine. So I feel that, there's a lot of challenges here, and it's not to blame the users. Yeah, users is one, definitely. But also vendors, but, trying to get vendors to do something now may be a bit too late. And we can always try to convince them to, sell more secure things, or when they sell something, make it secure by default. Don't enable telnet. You don't need telnet on those devices, especially listening on the public interface. But there are a few challenges here, like patch management, right? Fortunately, for a lot of the big brands, the known brands, the patches are available, right? But still, you have to go and download the firmware and flash it and then restart the router. There is no automated patch management like we do with our endpoints, or browser. So that's one thing, one challenge. Secure configuration is also another issue, I think, right? Sometimes it comes with default password, and users normally do not have the time to change it, or they don't even think about changing it because the device will still work with the default password, right? So attacker will exploit this. So that's another thing. The other points here, product security, if you buy it from some well-known vendors, then maybe they have a security team that they can, make patches available. But sometimes users just go for the cheapest thing, a no-name brand, and sometimes you don't even know where to get the patches from because, they just sell the box and that's it. And network providers can also be helpful here because some of these devices come from the provider, right? So if I subscribe to internet service, I'll get a free router. So I will just use that, but this free router is not secure, and I have no idea how to secure it. And if the network provider is not helping me, then this thing will be a risk to me and even to the the rest of the organization. So this is more strategic business issue, and of course user awareness and support. I think now we need to get user awareness and support even more than before, because now a lot of people are just doing work from home because we don't know when the coronavirus will go away, right? So of course there are some other challenges. I don't want to go deep into it, but cleaning up the infected machine, even with the data that I have, the source IP addresses of devices that can be infected, cleaning them up is it's another thing. um, applying fixes, right? So even if I contact someone, hey, your device is infected, then they say, so what do I do, right? I don't know exactly what you have to do, but there's a list of things that you have to do, and I can't help you because, that's not my device. So, there are some issues like that that we have to think about. Now, maybe, some practical things that we all can do, right? Or maybe if you want to communicate with someone, this could be a guide, right? So number one, you have to really analyze your risk of exposure. I think sometimes people are not aware that they can be in a risky situation when they work from home, right? Because to them, home is comfortable. I'm happy at home. Internet is fine. And, they don't think about the security risk. So get people to think of what you own, what you have at home, and then think about the security of those things. For technical people, I find it useful to get them to look at this website, Common Vulnerability and Exposures. Maybe when I finish this, I'll go to this website where you can actually search the product name that you have and see if there are any recent vulnerabilities, and then check the advice, right, from the relevant website. Or you can just go to the vendor website to see if there are any patches, right? But I find that in CVE, it's the information is put in a right perspective, which means that, hey, this is highly critical, this is 9 or 10, or this is not so critical, this is 1 and 2. So it's not really urgent to patch it now, so you have urgency levels there as well. Then get people to think like, how exposed is it, right? So of all the devices that you have, are they all the time exposed, right? And by here, exposed mean it could be, services, Telnet, SSH, SNMP, web, and so on and so forth. Can we monitor it, right? So for a router, maybe the best way we can monitor it is just to log into it, right? I don't know if the home router have SNMP where you can configure a Libra NMS or, or any of the network management tool to do it. At work, we can do that probably, but some of the home routers that we have probably don't even have SNMP and things like that. So, and practically patch and update if we can, right? So the idea is that think about risk, share about possibilities of how things can happen, maybe using some example that I gave earlier about VPN filter, roaming mantis and all of that, and try to get people to think about these issues. And I think that's it. That's all the presentation I've got. Any question or any discussion?
We got 2 questions in the chat.
Okay, let me look.
Let's look at it.
If I can find it. Okay. Okay. I never update my router because I afraid broken my router. That's a legitimate concern, because when you are updating firmware, you are sometimes risking that you might break the device. You might not do it properly, or you might somehow power goes off during the update and then the device become useless. Maybe my suggestion is maybe get an expert friend to help you, right? A technical friend who have done this before and go through it with you. So that could help, I think, right? Yes, and you can always back up. Yeah, I think the first time I did a router update, I learned the hard lesson of not backing up the configuration. And then when you update or upgrade and the config is gone, and you have to do it from scratch. So yeah, you have to do that. Yeah. So I think maybe if we are trying to educate people, we have to show this in the most easiest way, right? Step by step, right? Or if you have a friend, of course, get them to help you. Yeah. So if the employees working from home and they don't have security knowledge, how could you prevent themselves, from being attacked or putting themselves at risk? I think this is why we need security awareness. Like during this time, it's probably more important for the security people in the organization to talk to the non-technical people or the non-security people, the importance of security, right? maybe, you know, in our organization, we have like weekly updates, like reminders, you know, please patch this, you know, risk of phishing, risk of this, right? Best practices. I'm sure we can find the resources available already, or CamCERT may already have a lot of the awareness material and can be shared with, you know, our co-workers. And in our organization, we have a chat group, and one of the channels is called security, right? So anybody who has any security questions about their devices or their tools that they're using at home, they can come to the channel and ask me and another friend. We are always in that channel. And this is in addition to the IT support, right? So it's like, you know, how do I configure my router? Can you see if my DNS setting correct on the router? So people take screenshot and show it to us and like, okay, that looks correct. So I think you have to think about how to help everybody with the resources that you have. Maybe you can share some awareness materials, but at the same time, maybe be ready to help support. And I think maybe one of the critical things is if people can check on their router settings, that could be probably one of the first steps that can be helped as well. Most small soft company use crack file because company budget. Oof. And server firewall are licensed. So is there any way to make company more secure or not? So you know the risk of using unlicensed or you know, crack software is very high in terms of, you know, those software may contain you know, security issues, or they cannot be updated or upgraded. So I think if you use this, you are putting the company at risk. And maybe the cost will be more than buying the licensed software if you have a security problem. So maybe this is, again, I guess you have to convince the management to look at the issue from that perspective, that, you know, we have to invest in licensed software because it will give us peace of mind and it will not lead to financial loss because of security issue. Because if you don't, yes, it's cheaper to use crack file or crack software, but the cost will be more on our organization if something goes wrong. Maybe there's a ransomware, you know, or you know, or information being stolen, and you know, it puts the company at risk. So yeah, so that's my thinking. I don't know if anyone else have any ideas. Maybe you can contribute to this question as well.
Yeah, Ali, yeah, I would like to comment as well regarding the IoT, something like the router and the security camera, right? If we can say it's it cheap, and the lifetime of using it maybe just maybe let's say a year or 2 years. But for example, if in the future someone compromise our refrigerators, our TV, for example, then how can we be dealing with that? How can we fix the refrigerator? And
Right.
it's going to be, I cannot throw away my refrigerator. Actually, it can be long last to 7 years or 8 years. So how can I dealing with that?
Yeah,
Maybe
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate concern because you know, it's worrying because we are connecting everything on the internet, and we're not looking at these things right now, and you know, the problem will just get worse and worse if you don't manage it now.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried. You know, in terms of the router, we can throw it away, just $20 or so
Yeah.
you can buy it. But how about my refrigerator? It costs thousands.
Yeah, and your TV, you know, your other
air conditioning.
your car air condition. Yeah, so this is something to think about, especially for security people. You know, how do we manage it now so that it will not become a huge problem in the future?
It can be solved by technical alone, or it's need everyone to be involved, like policy, like government, maybe.
Yeah, I think this is where we need everybody to be involved, because vendors sometimes vendors are, purely profit oriented, right?
Okay.
Develop something, sell quickly, and then, get rich, and who cares about the product? So this will not work in security. So there might be some policies in place that will require them to do it by law, because if not, then they will not do it, right? Right now, some vendors are doing it because of competition.
Yeah.
The other vendors are doing it so well, and people are choosing that product because it has better security. Now I'm doing it. But there are also many vendors who just want to make, money quickly in the first year and then close shop, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
So anyone have any question for Ali? Is look like I check the chat.
Okay.
Wait, hold on. Okay, there is a question. You can check it on.
Okay. So some people are using mobile data. If it's risky or not. So the idea is the same, I think. So if you are using 4G, that particular device, it could be exposed to more than the internal network, right? So either the phone have an IP address that is connected to the local area network of maybe other phone users, for example. But also sometimes people also use 4G modems to share network with other devices. So that device or modem could be exposed. So if you have telnet, if you have all these other unnecessary services, people can try to connect to those services. So it's not the technology, it's the device, right? So what is this device exposing on the internet? So that's the question that we have to answer.
Mm-hmm.
In presentation, can you show us build a SOC with open source? Yeah, okay, sure, but that will be another talk, I guess.
Yeah,
happy to share some ideas. I'm not an expert, but I've seen many SOC, and in theory, there are some common concepts around this. Maybe another time we can do this.
Yeah, sure.
Building SOC with on a budget or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another question is about honeypots. Is it hosted in the cloud or on-premise? So we recommend the honeypots to be hosted on the internet itself. So either in a cloud or in an internet-facing environment. So not internal to the network, because the goal of the honeypot is to be attacked, and we don't want this to be mixed with other internal systems, right? So and can you access the Kibana? Depends. If you are a security researcher or a CERT, we can give you access. If you operate a honeypot, we can also give you access to it. So maybe email me or chat with me, then we can discuss further. Happy to clarify.
Yeah, it looks like we don't have any question coming up. But before we close off, I just would like to tell the participant that last 4 years, Ali have a chance to be in Cambodia, and he have an interesting talk about HoneyNet. The whole session is on HoneyNet. So if you want to look at it, what he had been talked the last 4 years about HoneyNet, honeypot, so you can go to Secure.me website, and then you can see an on-demand video last 4 years that we did with Ali also for the detail about HoneyNet and honeypot. And it's come to an end. So thank you so much, Ali, for spend the time with us. Although we are, it's night time in Australia. So thank you so much for today's session.
All right, no problem. It's always a pleasure to meet the community. I always want to come back. Hopefully after the coronavirus is over, we can have a physical session.
Yeah, actually we plan to bring you here again this year, but it cannot make it right now, right?
No problem.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
maybe we got a suggestion that can you share your presentation so I can share to audience.
Yes, I will send it to you, and then you can share it with the rest
Okay, I will
of
post
us.
it to the community website and everyone can take from it. And
Yeah.
thank you for today and good night, Ali.
All right. Good night, everybody. Take care.
Good
See
night.
you.
Yeah,
Bye.
yeah. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Ali.